Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Gladstone Cole, and I'm an ops architect at Cisco Systems. I will not give the big commercial about pro-Cisco, anti-Juniper, because, well, there's no point in that. We're all in the industry together. So I've been a system administrator for over a decade now, and I still enjoy being a system administrator. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about me and my journey and why I'm a happy system administrator. So I will explain how I found out that some people think I don't know how to spell LS, that I like light bulbs, and why my job will never be flashy. So first, a little bit about my background. I went to UC Berkeley, Cal, go Bears, and I actually started out in science, hard science. My degrees are in genetics and French, and I never took a computer class while I was at Cal. I did actually hang out a lot in the basement of the math and computer science building, Evans Hall. Back in the day, they called the basement down there the Web. For some reason, they changed that name. You know, it's now called the Dungeon. It had some workstations. It had some terminals down there, some Apollo workstations, and also had the open computing facility. So that was my first exposure to Unix, because my friend said, you have to get an email account. You have to, you know, you're in college. I want to keep in touch with my friends who are going to school across the country. So that was where you could go to get an account, and you had to use Unix to check your email. So that's how I learned about Unix. And then, after graduation, I got a job at the U.S. Forest Service doing DNA research on pine trees of all the strange things. So I would extract DNA and process it, and then once we had the DNA sequenced, I would take it and put it into our computers. Yes, we had a couple of VAXs back in the day, and we would compare those DNA sequences against all of the other DNA sequences that the Forest Service had and the U.S. Department of Agriculture to see exactly what genes we had in front of us. So I was doing that part-time. I was doing the lab assistant thing part-time. And they realized that I actually understood what I was typing on the computers. I wasn't just copying and pasting from my notes. And so they said, hey, maybe you should do the computer thing full-time, and we can hire somebody to wash the glassware and do all the work with the dangerous chemicals that, you know, we're kind of sensing you don't like as much. So I said, sure, great. And I had a fabulous boss at the time. He gave me a copy of Unix Power Tools and said, here, you have to read this, you have to study it, learn from it, and, you know, gave me lots of system administration tasks that would require me to use this book and learn more things about system administration. I still definitely have it on my bookshelf, and I do still consult it every now and again when I have a particular problem that I kind of remember was one of the recipes in that book. So let's see, that was kind of my big start in system administration. After that job, the next job that I had was in bioinformatics, and from then I was system administrator, more system administration over and over again. So these are some of the job titles I've had, and yes, you will notice that it does say operations manager in there. I did that for a little while. I'll get back to that, talk a little bit more about that and how it didn't end up working well for me at the time. So I don't look like the stereotypical sysadmin, you know, no glasses. I'm female, most particularly. So I have experienced some difficulties in the field. I've been in situations like this. Just in case you guys aren't familiar with XKCD, the comic, yes. It's a very geeky web comic about science, about engineering, about technology, and this guy really gets it. So it's one of the things that I take from this is there is a lot of pressure on women in this field. to do the job really well, to come in and not make mistakes, because they won't just reflect badly on you. They'll reflect badly on every other woman who might want to go into technology. So that's definitely a pressure that I feel a lot. It's a stereotype. It's a nasty thing. I actually, when I was working at SGI in technical support, I was working in the kernel group, and we were second level support. We weren't just the hello, yes, oh yeah, okay, I can spell computer, what's your problem, let me type it in and send it off to somebody else. So they actually had to go through somebody like that to get to me. So one caller was so stuck in the belief that women just don't understand system administration that as he was trying to describe how he was listing the contents of the directory, he was trying to spell LS for me. Can I get hands if there are people who don't actually know what LS is, just to make sure? Okay, good. So you can't say LS without spelling it, but somehow he had decided that I was so dumb that he had to go L as in Larry, S as in Sam, because I was a woman. So that was... I was flabbergasted, but that was kind of early in my career. It kind of reaffirmed for me that, yeah, some men are really dumb. And they just don't understand. There are a few women who choose this field. One personal example from my own background, the SANS firewall certification. This is the SANS Institute, System and Network Security. They do a lot of really high level and really, really deep dive, detailed technical trainings on computer security. One of the trainings is a firewall and perimeter defense certification, which covers TCP/IP basics, breaking down packets, things like OSI model, subnetting, and encryption standards, PKI, firewalls, IDS, routers, switches, to defense in depth. So it's a really great class. It's super detailed. And once you take the class, then you pass an exam. If you want honors, as I did, then you go ahead and you also write a paper. So I went back just because I got curious about this and counted up. I'm number 311, so that's why I stopped at 320. It seemed like a better place to stop than number 311. There were only 26 women who got this certification in the first 320, less than 10%. Wow. But there were 33 people who received honors in the first 320. And of those, 3 of them were women. So that's a slightly higher percentage than the total percentage of women in the certification, which I think kind of leads back to if you're going to go in and you're going to do this and you're going to try for honors, well, you are going to push really hard. You're going to do what you can to be, as Leslie was saying, not just as good as the guys, but better. So let's one of the things that I think might be related to why there are so few women in this field, I actually came across this article just a couple of weeks ago, and I really, really valued it. It resonated with me a lot. It's about learning difficulties in gender. So girls tend to be more self-disciplined earlier on, so they're praised for being good, clever, smart. They're praised for just something that they are. And whereas boys, on the other hand, are praised for their effort in sitting still, in staying focused. And so what they learn is boys learn that effort is the thing that will get them praise and success. And girls learn that just what they are is what will get them the praise and success. So when you're getting something that's really challenging to you, then the girls will say, well, this isn't something that I already am, I already have, and they'll get stuck. But the boys will say, wow, I don't understand this, I need to work harder. So that I've noticed this in myself, that sometimes when I get stuck, I have a strong tendency to throw up my hands and give up. And I found that the biggest rewards for me are when I push through that. So I'm just going to call this out as being something it doesn't mean you're dumb. It doesn't mean that you're not good at it. It's just your training may have been different. So it's not true of all girls. Some girls may have been praised for other things as well. And actually, I have an Asian male friend who said that he was also praised for being good, and he ran into some of these same struggles. So let's see. Because there are few women here in technology, I end up working with lots of guys. They can be really awkward. They can have bad social skills. And you are going to deal with awkward situations at some point in your career. I really liked one of the things Leslie said about being the first one to speak. But sometimes what happens in a meeting, if you're sitting there and you speak, there's this funny silence. Has anybody else experienced that? Okay. So Rebecca Jacoby, who's the CIO and she's one of the senior VPs at Cisco Systems, actually explained this to me at one point. She said that what happens, and I have men here, so maybe they'll nod and tell me whether or not this is right, says that men will automatically figure out a status hierarchy of all of the other men in the room, so they kind of know where they line up with the other guys in the meeting. And then, but you're a woman, so you can't get ranked on all those same things that they rank each other on. They don't know where you fit in the hierarchy. And what they'll tend to do is they'll tend to participate more. They'll tend to give feedback more to the people who are right next to them in the hierarchy. So if they don't know where you are in that hierarchy, they aren't going to know who should be responding to you. So they'll just kind of sit there and sit quietly and not say anything. So the one thing that I would say as a result of that, take note, because there will be people who will respond. Maybe there might be a little awkward silence. But pay attention to who those people are who do respond to you. I would say those are the people to cultivate. Those are the people who will probably be your buddies, and who, the more you encourage them, the more they'll support you, and it'll be this positive feedback loop that will encourage the rest of the team as well to interact with you as an equal. So another solution that I came up with is you go hang out with them. For me, I'm used to being the only woman on my team. Sometimes there'll be other technical women on other teams, but I find that if I make the effort and include myself in the team lunches or organize the team lunches so that there's an opportunity for me to go, the more time that I spend with them, the more they are inclined, once again, to interact with me and understand me and treat me as a colleague rather than some kind of special creature that they have to treat with kid gloves, which I really don't enjoy personally. So let's see. I happen to think that women can make great sysadmins. So these are a few generalizations that are just totally, things that I've noticed, me and my friends. We are more detail-oriented, or we tend to be. This is really important because, for example, I, unlike many of my colleagues, have never rebooted the wrong server. You know how you're logged in and you type reboot, and apparently there can be a moment of, oh shit, because there you are and you've typed reboot on the database master rather than on the slave. Well, if you're more detail-oriented, you're going to be careful about things like that. You're going to, maybe you're going to type in hostname before you type reboot. And that can be really, really important. Also, if you're doing steps in order, and if you do step 4 before step 3, sometimes that can have catastrophic results. So the next one, women tend to be brought up to be the ones who listen, the ones who sympathize, the ones who will be the ones to say, okay, let me hear what you're having to say. And to me, this creates a certain flexibility of thought. And for me, as a system administrator, having that flexibility of thought means that I can come up with different ways to solve things from the way that everybody else in the room has. And sometimes that's the thing that's needed to get us out of a difficult problem that we're in, or to maybe think of a better way from what the previous way was doing. We do collaborate well. We tend to, we'll tend to share well, let's say. I've noticed that it's a lot easier. It seems to be a lot easier for me to share credit on a project that I've worked on with my male colleagues, which is great until you get to the time when you're going for that bonus or that review if you've been sharing the credit all along. So not always a great thing, but I do think net it's a positive, because when there are larger projects, you're going to have to collaborate with other people. Maybe they're in different groups, maybe a programmer, maybe a project manager, program manager. So the more that you are able to collaborate, the better you will do farther on in your career. Multitasking, another stereotype is that women are better at multitasking. And I know there are lots of things about, well, multitasking is bad, multitasking is good. I don't know where to come down on that, but what I will say is, if there's been a major outage, like one time my entire data center was powered down, 365 Main in San Francisco, about 5 years ago, their power failed, their primary generators failed, and their backup generators weren't sized to meet all of the capacity needs. So every system, and that was pretty much our only data center at the time, all of our systems went down. So in that situation, it was really good to be able to not only keep track of what things were happening at the time, but also have the mental list and build the mental list of this is what needs to happen next. Okay, first is our DNS servers. All right, next is our LDAP servers. Next is our, whatever, DHCP, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And remembering, okay, we have the database master up. Now we have to go and bring up the web hosts, and remembering also to keep my boss informed of what was going on. So it just, having the ability to keep more than one thing in your head was really useful in that circumstance. I had to include this because I really love it. So I do think that women I do think we're superheroes all the time, not just when we go to the toilet. Oh, sure. Is it too long? So yeah, you can grab a copy of the slides later if you want it, and come up to me afterwards if you want. I can tell you where I got it. You're most welcome. So, okay. I said earlier that I would talk about why my job isn't flashy. And to me, it starts with that superhero cape. So I'm going to talk to you about why being a superhero is a bad thing to me. So superhero, something is broken and the superhero comes in and saves the day. Well, for me, in my operations role, when those things break, it's usually in the middle of the night when I'm trying to sleep. So right away, I've lost sleep. Sure, I'm able to save the day, but there I am the next day and I'm groggy and my boss is saying, well, oh my gosh, how did this happen? So I'm already a little bit off my game. But you lose focus if it interrupts you in the middle of the day, and it's really hard to get back to sleep after something like that in the middle of the night. So the other thing is, it means that you're in crisis mode. it's great to have the reputation as the person who fixes things. But if you keep being that person, then somebody at some point is going to notice, hey, this isn't the person who always fixes things. This is the person whose things always break. And I want to say that is not a good side of the equation to be on. And the other thing that I want to say on that is, maybe if your things keep breaking, maybe there really is something that you could be doing differently or better, so that you don't have to be the late night hero. So I'm going to get a little preachy here, because the biggest thing that I have found that helps me not get paged, not get woken up in the middle of the night, now that I'm not the first person that gets paged, but the second or third, is documentation. Especially in operations. It's so valuable to document what you know. If you do it, then they can look at the documentation instead of saying, oh my gosh, I have to phone Emily. And if you then take that documentation and share it with the junior people so that they know it's there, then they won't be calling you, they won't interrupt you in the middle of what you're doing. And the other thing is, you get a chance to improve your documentation skills with the questions that they ask you. I know that what I do now in documentation is a lot more robust than it was a few years ago, because I've learned from the questions that people ask me. All right, I need to include details on exactly where to find the log files that you're going to need to look at, not just assume that they understand how to find the log files. So to me, documentation can take many forms. It can be an email. I personally tend to prefer a doc on the website or wiki over email, because then they just have to be able to find it again and they can search for it rather than having to have something in their email. If you work in a big company, we have corporate retention policies on email, and you're not supposed to keep messages around for very long, no matter how useful they are. So put it up on the wiki. Scripts and automation, I think, are also really good forms of documentation, because number one, they'll make whatever it is you want them to do repeatable and consistent, and that's a really huge thing. Also, if somebody is curious, if they want to learn more, they can read the script, they can parse it out, they can figure out exactly what's happening. Likewise, automation, the same thing. It's a way of keeping the systems in a consistent state. So it's really, really valuable form of documentation that, once again, people can parse to find out what's going on. So when I do my job right, it's not flashy. It may be kind of boring, because when things break, people can look at the documentation, they can know how to fix it, or at least get started, and then perhaps they will have, as they're reading the documentation, perhaps they will have figured out something, perhaps they will be able to figure out the next place to look. So if I have done something on Tuesday, like if I've said, hey, this server is not responding well enough, I need to add a new slave to this database cluster on Tuesday, and then that means that when we got extra site traffic on Thursday, the slave didn't go down. You know, that's pretty boring. Nobody's going to know that I prevented the outage, because they can't really tell that there would be an outage unless they're paying really, really close attention. But the one thing about preventing outages is that means that if I've done all my documentation, if I've done all my prep work, then I'm done with that issue, that problem. I can go on and I can solve a new problem or learn a new thing. So one of the things I really, really dislike is having to solve the same problem over and over and over again. If I do, that's where I need to write a script. That's where I need to do some automation. That's where I need to do more training or documentation. So, okay, keeping things dull. I get lots of sleep, but it also means that they don't know that I'm fixing things. You're invisible if it's just all going well. If you're unlucky, your boss is only paying attention to you when something you own breaks. My boss, I don't know about you guys, but my boss is really busy. I only actually seem to sit with him in meetings when we're trying to do remediation on something that has broken. And that's not the kind of attention that I want to have be the only interactions I have with my boss. So they won't notice you when they're thinking, okay, who do I give a raise to? Who do I give a promotion to? Should I give Emily a bonus? So how do you get them to notice what you're doing? Well, there are a couple of things, but the big thing that I have found that is really easy that anybody can do, even if you don't have huge amounts of data to back you up, when you've been dealing with something like an outage or a release or whatever, you can send out emails saying, hey, I would like to thank the following people for their participation, for their assistance. Now, to me, this does a couple of really good things. One, you're praising other people. It's always good to just help improve their mood, thank them for what they've done. The other thing it'll do is they will appreciate you more because you're actually taking the time to notice them. And oftentimes what will happen is if I CC people's bosses on these thank you emails, they'll reply to all and they'll include my boss and they'll say, no, thank you, Emily, for all the help that you gave. And then, there's my boss getting the thank you, knowing that I'm the first one to reach out. So that can be a real positive. And also you are building a reputation of being grateful for other people's help and for being easy to work with and for being willing to recognize what other people do. And that's really positive for us at Cisco in particular, because all of the managers get together, the development managers, the QA managers, the operations managers, will all get together when they're trying to decide who gets what promotions and raises, and they'll actually stack rank us all against each other. So it's good not only to have your boss know what you're doing, but it's good to have the other management know the kinds of things you're doing. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. When I'm feeling underappreciated, when I'm feeling invisible, or when things are going really badly at a job, I try to come up with a few things that happened to me today that are positive, that are work-related. That over time, that has helped me get through days at a bad job where I know I just can't get away from it very easily. It has helped me also actually over time. And by the way, just to call out to something Leslie said, to me, I find that the things that I like are the things that I tend to be good at. She was talking about find the things that you're good at. To me, finding the things that you like because you're passionate about them, you're putting in the effort, it's the same thing for me. So when I say these are things I like, it can also say, okay, yes, these are things I'm good at. So anyway, over time, finding these things that you like, that you're good at, is a thing that has helped me figure out where I want to go in system administration, figuring out what I want to do next, maybe the next job, maybe the next role within that same company. So the more you do that, the happier you'll be at work, which is really important to me. So there are a few things that I enjoy about my job, and I'm going really slowly. I will speed it up. Yes, thank you. Okay, so light bulb. I said I'd talk about why I like light bulbs. Figuring these things out, I really enjoy that aha moment that comes when you figure things out and find the answer to a tricky problem. The other thing that I really enjoy is not only figuring something out myself, but helping other people to figure things out. So that that's something that I really enjoy, that I like doing as a more senior system administrator, is being able to train other people. Other things that I'm doing, this is obviously a really bad monitoring board. You look at that duration, it's been there for 3/4 of a year. That's not okay. So in operations, what I can do if things are not going well, I can take a couple of minutes and just cheer myself up by turning that red into green in my monitoring. I have a lot of fun with that. So I'm sorry this picture didn't turn out really well. I really like my colleagues. You're going to spend a lot of time with your colleagues. If you don't like them, it's going to just make you more miserable at your job. If you do like them, even a bad job will be a lot better. So learning new things, it's great for me. I love learning new things, and the more I can learn, the happier I am. So another thing that I think is really important is avoiding burnout. Take breaks, go get a cup of coffee, walk around the building, take vacations. If your boss will let you, take a week off or two, take 3-day weekends. It allows you to get back to your job refreshed. Getting exercise, having something else you do after hours that gives you a mental break is really, really important, because then you can come back to work refreshed and energized. And it doesn't have to be something that's hugely different from what you do all the time, if you love what you do all the time. But give your brain a chance to get some rest as well. So the things that I do historical dance and historical reenactment. This is me and my friends in our 1920s and 1930s finery at San Simeon, aka Hearst Castle in Southern California. Another thing that I do for fun is I do musical theater. So here I am, my character is meeting this character that she's completely in love with, but she's never actually spoken to. Think, your favorite rock star, your favorite movie actor. So this is pretty different from system administration. So for me, that break is really important. So I'm just going to briefly touch on this. Some people, management is a great thing that they want to do. Skill set is very different. Sometimes you'll find that you're not as good at the things that make you a good manager, which is working through others, which is generally not having hands-on work. There is a lot more politics. There are going to be a lot more meetings. You can, if you want to, there are places you can grow your career without being a manager. If you're like Leslie, you certainly can do both if you want to. So to sum up, the things that I like, the things I'm good at, are things that are good for system administration, the documentation, the automation, and troubleshooting. I love being able to learn all the time. I love my colleagues, and I have outside hobbies that keep me energized. And for me, that makes for a happy system administrator, one who's eager to go to work and eager to find out what the next challenge is. So here are some friends, system administrators, or former system administrators who gave me some advice, and pictures of my cats. So thank you very much. I'd be happy to take any questions or comments, or I think we have time. Microphone, please.
I feel short again. Okay, so you talk a lot about your documentation and how you share what you do so that other people can pick up on it and you don't have to be the person that gets called. Do you feel like you're the only one that does that? Or do you feel like your whole team kind of has that mentality?
I think that I certainly, when I started, I was the only one who did that. I joined Ironport before Cisco acquired it, and the first 2 wiki documents that I made within my first week are, one, here are all the things that a sysadmin will need to get started up and running. Here are all the accounts that you'll need. Here are all the places where you can go where the documentation is. And number 2 was an acronym list. This is what all of the mysterious code words mean. So I do think, though, that over time, I've been able to encourage people by saying, hey, look, if the benefits are obvious because they don't have to be, oh, I was up at 3 dealing with this outage. So I do think that although they may not be as inherently good at documentation, I do think that they understand the importance of it and they are trying to do more of it.
Yes, sysadmins can be notoriously bad at documentation. And sometimes it's just a laziness factor or I don't like documentation, but sometimes it can be a job security. I'm the only one that knows this, and therefore you have to call me to get it fixed.
So to me, I like the job security of I can learn a new thing really quickly. That to me is more powerful because then the thing I really don't like is solving the same problem over and over and over and over again. If I'm the only one who knows something, then I have to get pulled in whenever things come up. I don't like that. I want to move on to the next new thing, and I think it's really valuable to be able to say yes. And I picked up, whatever it was, and I was able to learn it. And now I have this new thing that I can do for the company, or that I can put on my resume, or that I can do in my off time because I didn't have to answer the same question that I answered 2 months ago to the same person. It's all written down. So that's the reason for me. I don't believe in that kind of job security. It doesn't satisfy me.
I think that's a great outlook to foster, and maybe it'll go viral.
Well, I can repeat it if you need, but it's better.
You mentioned that men, when they get together in a meeting, find that they know everyone else's ranking. Is this an automatic thing, or have they developed the rankings over time? It's very curious to me. I'd like to, know if there are things you can look at and put down and quantify. That's curious to me.
So I don't know a lot more about that. Maybe some of the men in the room have some input. It just, I suspect it's something that builds up over time.
So it depends on the individuals. It depends on the organization. It depends, in some cases, on HR. Fortunately, I work at a company where we don't have some of the issues that maybe some of you experience, but I have seen them, and I'm sure a lot of the other guys have also seen that as well. And the biggest challenge, I think, is in these meetings, there are individuals like that. Those are, and I'm going to be really mean when I say this, but some of them are the kind that will do whatever it takes to move up the ladder. But there are a lot more like myself and hopefully the other guys that are in here that aren't like that. We don't look at the pecking order. We do listen. Yeah. So when we hear somebody speaking, we're trying to understand what their point of view is. But I always personally try to get to know all the people who are going to be in that meeting before I go to the meeting. It doesn't matter, what their background is, what their religion is, what their sex is, or any of that. And it's important to understand that, that is an important thing, that when you go into those meetings, if you identify people like that, you need to learn how to work around them, because in a lot of organizations nowadays, those people won't be around forever. Yeah. There's still the good old boys club in some companies, but you can work around them, and it's find the people that will support you and will work with you as a partner and not try to just be rolling over you, so to speak. Because it happens to guys as well.
Yeah.
So you're saying the pecking order is defined by your organizational position plus some sort of fraternities that you belong to?
For the people that are in I guess to say on the negative side.
For the people who believe in this, that's what it's based on. For the companies that you are and whether or not you're looking there.
I see that at some companies. I don't see it at my current company, but I've seen it at other companies.
And this
VMware. Yeah. We are hiring, but I'm not.
This isn't everybody. I thank you, John, because I do want to stress that this isn't all guys that do this. It's just some guys, and you seek out the guys like John who don't. Those are the guys to cultivate.
I think in the companies where it's the worst, the organizational culture supports the bad behavior. And so if your company supports that, then it's harder to overcome or work through. But if you have a company that doesn't support bad behavior and you have people who think bad behavior is unacceptable, it actually goes away quicker. And I think it helps when we have both genders working on this, because sometimes it takes another man saying that's completely unacceptable for the bad person to say, not bad person with bad behavior to say, oh, really? That was over the line? Yes, I, another man, think that was over the line. And somehow it means more.
Which is unfortunate, but...
If I can say one other thing that's really important.
Please.
The best bosses I have been women.
Okay.
So I'll leave it at that. You can look at the history of our company. We have a lot of executives in that space. I see somebody I recognize. Old college buddy. But yeah, so honestly, there are organizations that will support you, and in many cases, sometimes you do have to work with your HR department to basically address some of those issues and get a change to happen in the company.
And actually, my question was not because I have issues with it.
Yeah.
My question was, that seems like a fun thing to do in a meeting, to sit down there and remind.
It's politics, though.
So it's politics, and
Maybe there was something about other things.
I think it also goes back to something that Leslie mentioned in her talk, which is build the R before the I. That's all relationship stuff. And then the meeting is about solving an issue, but you already have relationships with all the people. And just exactly as John was saying, you want to build those relationships before you're in that meeting. So that probably helps people who set pecking orders. That helps them determine where they are. It helps those of us who don't like to set pecking orders figure out how to work with everybody in the room and their quirks. So, yeah, take what you can from that.
This might seem lighthearted, but I think there's more truth to it than we might care to admit, that when you're in one of those groups where people think about pecking orders, if you think back to middle school, the behavior is actually remarkably similar, and the right way to deal with it is remarkably similar.
But I have found that if people want to play games and play with pecking orders, the best way to get around it is to ignore it. And, just be as good and technically sharp as you possibly can be. And, everybody else can go play whatever games they want. But they then have to listen to you at some point.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Couple comments. I think this would be something fantastic we can bring up in the workshop this afternoon. Another thing to consider is it's probably not conscious and it's not meant to be harmful. If I'm going to critique or challenge someone, I would be more comfortable doing that with people I perceive as my peers, which means they're next to me in the pecking order. I don't want to pick on someone who I think is brand new because I don't want them to feel bad. I might not be confident enough or comfortable enough to challenge someone at the top just because they may know more and I may be out of it. So, but I think this would be fantastic for us to bring up this afternoon too. So.
Great.
I just wanted to say that women do that too. Like, I've been judged based on how I dress and things
Yeah.
like that. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe they're not org chart related, maybe they're more fashion related, but definitely I've seen women do that too.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, great. All right, thank you, everybody.